really excited to pick your brain today and go over all this great information. But as usual, I kind of want to start in the NFL. The NFC East is a nightmare, Tony, and the Philadelphia Eagles are a really big piece of that. Doug Pederson, having a tough time. You would, really rightfully mentioned, I want to say maybe this was 4 or 5 weeks ago now that a lot of people were saying that, maybe Doug Pederson's best days as a coach were behind him. It has not been a great season for Pederson. The Eagles have been massively banged up, which should be at least some caveat to what's been going on this season. But is Doug Pederson safe, and what do you make of this coaching for this season, for the Eagles this season?
Well, I mean, like you said, we mentioned back in September on this podcast that a lot of people have said his best days are behind him or that he's tapped out. And that angered a lot of Eagles fans. But as the season has gone on, yes, they've been banged up, but I've seen a lot of bad or at least questionable decisions from Doug Pederson. A couple of things. I don't think they're going to fire Doug Pederson after this one bad year. I know, they haven't been able to basically capitalize on what was a great Super Bowl win a couple of years ago. That was with Nick Foles. Carson Wentz hasn't progressed in large part because he's been injured, in other part because of poor play. I think one or two things are going to happen. And this is speculation on my behalf. This is not inside information because I really haven't talked to anybody. I don't think they'll fire him, but they'll make wholesale changes in the coaching staff unless Doug Pederson feels he's had enough. And you never know in this day and age of the NFL, that could happen. Again, speculation on my behalf. All I know is that people have said to me they look at him and they think he's tapped out.
Interesting. That's a very interesting thing to think about as this Eagles season progresses. Oddly enough, they could still end up with a top 4 draft pick, or they could end up winning the Super Bowl at this point because the NFC East is just a complete crapshoot, and one of those teams is ultimately going to end up in the playoffs. Let's talk a little bit about the quarterback position there, because for me personally, and again, I know that the offensive line, the weapons at receiver have been banged up, but Carson Wentz might be the most disappointing player in the NFL for me right now. Just coming off of a season, a few years ago where he was, did he win MVP? He was either in the MVP conversation or won MVP. I think he won MVP. And then, obviously had the injury. Nick Foles won the Super Bowl in that season as quarterback, just never came back the same. And then really seems to be struggling more than ever this season. Let's talk a little bit about the difference between Carson Wentz and Jalen Hurts, because I know a lot of people are talking, should Jalen Hurts start, be starting the conversation as the starting quarterback for the Eagles with the struggles that Wentz has had. What are your takes on these two quarterbacks?
Jalen Hurts is not a given. Jalen Hurts had a great senior season at Oklahoma and then went to the Senior Bowl in Oklahoma where they play a spread offense, where the tight end is usually lined up in the slot. They don't use a fullback. Although the Eagles off the line, their tight ends up in the slot. And then went to the Senior Bowl and really stunk it up in 3 days of practice when he played in an NFL style of offense. Went to the combine, had a good combine, was taken late in the second round by the Eagles. So, for people screaming for Jalen Hurts, I don't know that Jalen Hurts is going to come in right away in an NFL offense where he's never really performed at a high level. Even at Alabama, he did in spurts, but not over a consistent basis, and really prove anything. I think with Carson Wentz is your prototypical NFL quarterback. That's why he was the second pick of the draft. He had a great 3 days of practice at the Senior Bowl when he went, which is why he skyrocketed up draft boards. I think with Wentz, you're just going to have to figure it out with him. You're going to have to get him to play through it and see what you got and make your decision. They gave him a huge contract a few years ago. They're not going to replace him. They shouldn't. I really think with this guy this deep into his career, injuries aside, you really got to help let him play it and help him figure it out.
I'm right there with you. And I still think when you're just a couple years removed from him playing at such a high level, to me, it's more on the coaching staff to figure out something to get him back playing the right way. He's shown that he's a more than capable NFL quarterback. When he's on and when he's right, he can be right up there with any quarterback in this league. Just hasn't shown it recently. I do wonder if they start getting Jalen Hurts a little bit more, maybe in some of the interesting Wildcat type stuff, and just to maybe give him a little bit of look in some packages here and there. I know they've been sprinkling it in, but I wonder if they start using a little bit more of that. But this is going to be a really interesting way that the Eagles end the season, and to see, can they start picking up some momentum? Can Carson Wentz start getting back on form? Do they take a look at Jalen Hurts? All these things to me are going to be very, very interesting. And thank you for Danny Tundra in the comments who clarified Wentz did not win the MVP. He was on his way until he did tear his ACL.
Injured, right?
But and speaking of which, for those of you who are in the room, please feel free to share your comments and questions, and we'll try to get to some of those questions as we go along here. But all right, we'll stick in the NFC East for one more question, Tony. In this albatross of a division, Giants, Eagles, Cowboys, and football team, who comes out on top of this ridiculous division?
I looked at the Eagles' schedule. They got a tough 3-game schedule coming up. I mean, they've got some difficult teams. The Giants are starting to turn it around. The Giants are not playing bad football. And remember, really, except for the San Francisco game, the Giants were in every game this season. Even when they were losing early on, it was just the play here or there late in the game that basically, turned the tide of the contest. You talk about the first game when the Giants played the Eagles. I mean, it was an outright drop by Evan Engram, which led to the Giants having to punt the ball, and the Eagles went down the other side of the field, scored a touchdown, and that was it. So you look at the Eagles' schedule coming up, especially the next 3 games. You look at the way the Giants are playing. The Giants could win the division with a 7-9 record. I
think that's right. And I think when I look at the 4 teams, the best unit on those 4 teams right now to me is the Giants defense. And I just think that unit's playing very, very good football. And I think they have an opportunity, maybe very good football is relative to the division I'm talking about, but might be the best unit of the 8, I guess, in that division, and really like the way that they're headed. And I think they may end up ultimately winning the division. Let's go to the Miami Dolphins, because they created, I guess, a small amount of controversy this past week when they decided to bench Tua Tagovailoa, and it was just a really interesting decision. I go back and forth on this, Tony, because on one hand, I like the fact that every player is treated equally, and if you're not doing your job and holding your end of the bargain, you can get replaced at any time, and they're going to give somebody else a chance to go out and perform better. On the same token, to me, this season isn't necessarily about the Dolphins trying to win. This is about trying to develop a quarterback in Tua. I know they're playing well, but this is an opportunity really to develop Tua. And I kind of want to see him have the opportunity to have a bad game and see if he can overcome it and, overcome that adversity and try to lead them back to win a game, because ultimately as a starter in this league, that's something that you need to do. Where do you kind of come out on this conversation?
It's not a situation like we just talked about with Carson Wentz, where this guy is a veteran or getting into his veteran years, if you will. Tua is a rookie who didn't even start this season. So I got no problem with benching him, especially since you say you want to see him come through a bad game. He was terrible. I think it was like 6 sacks he had up at that point when they benched him. 5 of his 8 drives were 3-and-outs. Granted, it wasn't all his fault, but he was not moving the offense. Why let the guy get beaten up? Gosh forbid, get hurt, things like that. I had no problem with that. I think, and again, they won with Fitzpatrick. So why not bench him, watch him on the sidelines, although Fitzpatrick didn't do all that much better, and basically give him a rest, because it wasn't going to get any better for Tua in that game. And then he started to press. Gosh forbid, he gets injured, makes a lot of mental mistakes. I had no problem with that. I have no problem with any team doing that with a rookie quarterback.
Yeah, and I think that's a good point too, because I think to some extent there's times where you have to protect these players from themselves. And if they're not picking up things up front, they're taking a ton of sacks, they're just, not picking up the things that they're supposed to in that game. You kind of want to save them from themselves and let them maybe just take a breather, take a rest, and not have a bad game turn into a just brutal game where it ruins his confidence or something like that, or he ends up taking a hit where tears his ACL, unfortunately, like what happened with Joe Burrow. So I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think that'll be a learning opportunity. And I don't think Tua is going to take that and be upset or be I think he's going to want to learn from it. I think he's going to want to go out and prove next week that he's the guy, and he's ready to show that last week was an anomaly.
Absolutely, team player. I mean, he's already said he thought it was the best thing for the team. Now, it's a learning point. It's a hurdle on the road. Let's see where he goes from here.
All right, let's move over to college football, but stick with the quarterback position. We're going to talk about a lot of prospects today, but I know one name that's kind of been talked about. We know the top 4 quarterbacks in this draft. At least I think we do. Kyle Trask seems to be that 5th quarterback. Do you think he can sneak in and be a first-round player, or is he more of a day 2 type of guy?
Yeah, I think he's a day 2 type of guy. Number one, it's very tough to get 5 quarterbacks selected in the first round. I think it's only been done once in the past 18 years. And the other thing is, listen, Trask has had a tremendous year. He should be the Heisman, the front runner for the Heisman right there with Mac Jones of Alabama, and he should be battling it out to the very end. He seems to play better week in and week out. He's having almost a Joe Burrow type of season the way Burrow had last year. But the fact is Trask doesn't have the arm strength of Burrow, and he absolutely does not have the mobility or elusiveness. He's more of a pocket passer who really struggles to elude defenders, scramble around, or avoid the rush. That's really not the profile of what teams want in a quarterback these days, especially a first-round quarterback. Could he go first round? I think the chances are minimal. I think it's more of a situation where a team may trade back into the first round to get him to be the fifth quarterback selected in the first round, because we know who the top four guys are, especially if Zach Wilson, specifically if Zach Wilson enters. We're going to talk about Zach Wilson a little bit. But I think he's more of a second-day pick. He's having a tremendous season, but he's a guy that you better make sure you build a strong offensive line around, because he's not going to be a guy like Kyler Murray. He's not going to be a guy like even a Drew Brees type, where he can elude the rush and occasionally pick up yardage with his legs.
Now, going back to last season, there was a less mobile quarterback, Jacob Eason, that was taken in about the fourth round of the draft. How would you compare, say, a Kyle Trask to a Jacob Eason?
Jacob Eason has more arm talent. He's more physically gifted, but he's fractionally mature as Kyle Trask. He wasn't the leader Kyle Trask was. He's not the guy that can command or control the offense Kyle Trask was. I think Kyle Trask is more accurate. I think Kyle Trask does a better job using all of his targets than Jacob Eason did. Kyle Trask also has a much significantly larger body of work than Jacob Eason did entering the draft.
All right, that makes a ton of sense. We had a couple questions kind of that were the same that came in. Marco Mart asked, who is the quarterback that Niners should be eyeing? And then another person, I think it was Danny, posted, how perfect would Kyle Trask be in the Kyle Shanahan offense? Do you believe that Trask would be a fit? And which quarterback of the top quarterbacks do you feel like would be the best fit in that Kyle Shanahan system?
Well, I mean, depends on where the Niners draft. I don't think they're going to take a quarterback in the first round. I think they got some other positions that they have to address. But if he's there in round two, I'm sure that's got to be a consideration, because really after Trask, the quarterback position really drops off in the 2021 draft.
Gotcha. Makes sense. All right. This has been the season of Zach Wilson. It seems every single year there's a player, although, Zaven Collins, we could talk about here in this conversation as well, but every single year there seems to be a player who really makes a name for himself, just has a meteoric rise. And it certainly seems to be Zach Wilson this season. We've previously talked about Wilson concentrating on the season right now and not necessarily focusing on the draft. He'll go through the process of getting a draft grade once the season's over. But any additional word on BYU at the moment?
Two things. Number one, on Zach Wilson, I'm told he has been taking agent meetings in the past couple of weeks, so he's getting a jump on the next start on his next level decision. As we talked about, he was going to wait till after the season, get his draft grade, get his opinions, but I'm told he's already started the process of speaking and interviewing agents. So, I mean, there's no official word. Speculatively, you can expect Zach Wilson to enter the draft, primarily because he's had such a tremendous season. There's so much talk about him being a top 12 pick. If he doesn't enter the draft, I think it'll be a major surprise. I'm also hearing his left tackle, Brady Christensen, who I have graded as a fourth rounder right now, is also leaning towards entering the draft. I think I'll get a better picture of it this weekend. But Christensen is a terrific left tackle. He's got outstanding length, not the greatest footwork off the edge, but he blocks with solid fundamentals. He's got long arms. Does a good job knocking those pass rushers from their angle of attack. I'm hearing Christensen could also enter the draft along with Wilson.